Real happy to have my next guest on the one-on-one Card Shop guest line. He's a man who wears many hats. He's been called a serial entrepreneur, an actor, a collector. He's the CEO of Dope.com. There he is wearing a shirt. I don't want to delay bringing him on. Mr. Rob Gough, welcome to the show.
John, thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
Well, I appreciate you being here. We the Mantle cards, the topic of the hobby, taking the hobby world by storm. We're definitely going to talk about that. But also one thing with the show, the mantra of the show is the hobby's the people. And I like to learn, and you're more than just one deal and one card. And I don't, as much as that's a huge focus, I want to speak to some other stuff as well. And I know, I asked you if we could talk about it. You said it was okay. I know in college you were given a bad diagnosis with cancer and a bad prognosis. Obviously, you're still here, thankfully, and you beat that. Kind of talk about maybe how that affected your outlook on life and just things you do even on a daily basis now and then too.
Yeah, you think about it. I was 17 in college, and I got diagnosed, I guess, at the end of my freshman year, probably around 18 years of age. And, you think you're invincible at that point in your life, and nothing can stop you. And then you find out that you have cancer, and a bone cancer that, you could die from. But for me personally, I never once thought I was going to die. I've always just been so confident that whatever you want, you can do, and nothing's going to stop you except your own mind. So for me, I didn't let it stop me, and I never thought it was, but it did change my life in a manner where, maybe I didn't appreciate the small things at the time. I definitely appreciated a lot of things, but, I never maybe took the time to look at the sky or to smell the air and really appreciate how amazing that this life that we have is. So very thankful to be here. That's for sure.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I know some people, I've had some friends who fortunately have beaten cancer as well. And sometimes it's not always easy to talk about. And I appreciate you sharing that and how it's, like you said, you appreciate maybe little things you didn't notice as much prior to something like that happening and whatnot. So,
yeah, I'm pumped to be here and just, every day to wake up and be able to live the life that I live is, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not like, wow, this is amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so I know it's the old cliche podcast question, you collected cards, like a lot of us, the same kind of similar stories as a kid. Then we all kind of, take a break from it, high school girls, all those threads. Kind of talk about when you decide, like when you came back, what it was, what happened, what caused that to reignite your passion for the hobby.
Yeah, so I was living in Los Angeles, and I moved to Puerto Rico during COVID. And, I had some guys reach out and said, hey, we're doing a Zoom call. We started collecting cards. You should jump on and kind of learn about it. So, of course, I haven't collected cards in however long, since I was a kid. And I had nothing else to do. It was COVID. I just moved to a place. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And, and I get off that call, and I'm thinking these guys are kind of like, are they serious? Like, this is kind of crazy. And then you start buying, and so then I said, okay, I'm going to spend $100,000, and they helped me kind of, with a diversified portfolio of a box. And then once you get it, you start to see these iconic things and these, this history. And then I just, it's a bug, you get it. And then I just kept buying more and more and just really got ingrained. And then it turned out my day was, 10 hours a day of card talk. So I really got the bug, and that's what happened. So that was August of 2020. And, that budget just kept, saying, oh, I'm never going to spend over this. And that number kept going. And we want more and more cards, and just got addicted. And, even now I'm deep. I've got a lot of things. And then I got off a call with this guy, and I may I may, I may.
You can make more news.
I don't know. Oh man.
Talk about, Rob, you know, like you said, you collected when you were younger, you come back. It's a different hobby from our younger years. I think that's goes without saying. Talk about, you know, were you surprised by where the hobby was from where you remembered it as a younger man, as a younger kid? Were you sort of like, did it overwhelm you a little bit? Like, holy smokes, like, you know, a card when I was a kid, $20 was like a great card. And here we're, you know, grading obviously is more big time now in the hobby than it was many years ago. And talk about just like coming back, just how the hobby's so different. Was it overwhelming? How did you navigate through that, being it's so different?
Yeah, it's much different. You know, as a kid, all I worried about were the corners of the card. You know, I didn't even know about PD or OC, you know, anything about the print defects or off centers or things. And so, you know, when I first got back in, you know, just because it said a 9, I didn't care if it had OC. I didn't know the difference, you know, the qualifiers. So that was something that I learned is, hey, don't buy qualifiers. So I learned that pretty quick. And that was just a group of guys that was there to, you know, everybody's kind of doing their own research. There's a couple of guys that have been in it for a long time, and that really helped. But, you know, all the new technology, all the new businesses that go into it, I think has been tremendous for the hobby. Obviously, that's the grading companies being one of them. So once I kind of navigated and learned the just fundamentals, you know, it just made a lot more sense. You know, also it's a lot easier to exit something now. If you want to become liquid, you know, you don't have to go to a card shop and worry about if, you know, how that process go there, you know, because right where I live, there's no card shops. So you have eBay, you have all the auction companies. And so I think just the hobby in general is tremendous now. And same thing, if you want to buy high-end cards back in the day, I mean, how could you move those? I have no idea. Nowadays, you know, it's just, you can move it a lot faster and easier than ever before. So, and you know, I'm an art collector. So to buy art, I've never sold a piece of art, but you know, if I was going to, it'd be a big deal. I have to go to the auction company, you know, get it appraised. It's a pain. I'm trying to send some to a house here that I have. And, you know, with the card, it's very simple. It's small, easy to become liquid fast, and easy to transport. So I think overall, the industry has evolved perfectly in a great way, and I hope it just continues to evolve.
It's made, to me, it's made the card community, even though the card community is million strong, it's made it smaller. Social media has made, you can work deals with someone on another continent and get a deal done and acquire a card, sell a card, or what have you. Years ago, obviously, I'm older than you, so I was in the cards before there was even social media. Like you said, you just traded with who was near you, or in school, or in class, or after school. And now the card community is just worldwide, and you can make those transactions at 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. Depending on where in the world you're dealing with it. And like you said, it's probably easier in that respect. How difficult was it though to, you know, knowing the values, and somebody, obviously these cards go for, you know, insane amounts of money. Was that intimidating at all, or not necessarily?
Well, you know, I look at the eBay last sold prices, and then I also use one of the websites that tells you all the transactions going forward, looking at the cards, the transactions. So I definitely use those tools.
Yeah.
That makes it very helpful. Without that, then I would be lost. I would just be throwing darts at a wall as far as the price goes. But, you know, looking at that data, you know, it's a much easier and cleaner way to know the real values. Yeah.
So moving on to the Mantle card, congratulations on the transaction. PSA 9, 52 Topps Mantle. It's an iconic card. I mean, you just have to say 52 Topps. You don't even have to say Mantle, and it's the next word that comes to mind. Now, you did this in a private sale, not in an auction setting. You know, I don't know what you can or can't say, but I guess the first thing I think about in a transaction, you know, it's the highest amount paid for a card at $5.2 million. How close did that, the deal's obviously done, but how close were there moments where it looked like maybe this wasn't going to happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's one, you know, the initial point, the seller allowing it to be sold, right? I mean, once you have these cards, it's very rare that you want to let go of them. And so that was the initial hurdle, I guess, that the deal couldn't go through. And then once realized that the seller was possibly willing to sell, then obviously their price is high and my price is lower, and then you negotiate and you come to the middle. So you know, there were some questionable times, but you know, I think if both parties are willing to make a deal, then you're going to figure it out, you know. And I definitely wanted the card. I just, you know, you have to make sure that it makes sense. So yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't a tough transaction, to be honest. I think it was you know, it went very smoothly.
Yeah. Which is nice. You know, a lot of people probably don't realize this is not your first 52 Topps Mantle. It's your first 9, but you know, you've owned this card before in varying conditions, and you know, there's, I believe, if my math is right, there's 6 9s that are known to existence, and there's 3 10s. I guess my question to you, Rob, is a 10 in your mind? Is acquiring one of those 3 10s something that you know, a goal of yours, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a better card. You know, mine is definitely, I think, better than all the other 9s, and you know, just because, yeah, I mean, I would love a 10. Come on, who wouldn't? You know, but it being the 4th best Mantle is incredible. But yeah, I would love a 10 for sure.
Yeah, I gotta ask. I mean, it's kind of so if you got one of those 3 10s, what do you do? What do you do with the 9 you have? Do you keep them both? Do you move one to offset the 10? How does that? You know,
right now I'm trying to do the rainbow of Mantle. So if I'm still trying to do that, I would complete it, and then that'd be incredible. But you know, it's a good question. I also think it's important to share these. And, you know, if I've got the 9, I don't want to be, I mean, if I got the 10, I don't know if you know, is that greedy of me to keep the 9 too? You know, I definitely want other people to enjoy these things also, but I don't know. That's a great question. I'd say right now, who knows? It'd be a coin flip. I don't have any, I don't have, you know, I want to keep this one for probably ever. So I don't have any, I didn't buy it to flip it.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my other question too. I mean, do you see when you look at some of these spikes and even these more modern cards, we see what the Trout updates have done even in the last week or two, literally. And I've heard you say, like, people who say, man, $5.2 million for a card. But when you look at what some are, even these newer cards, percentage wise, you know, are going up. When you crunch these numbers, you know, your transactions actually ahead of that curve. Like, go ahead. I mean, you know, I mean, where do you know, when you look at it from that perspective, like, this is not as crazy as someone. A lot of times it might be someone, you know, on the fringe of the hobby, or doesn't know and doesn't look at the overall what's going on. But you know, did you have any fear, like, in making this deal, where you're like, did you think, am I doing the right thing? You know, were there any trepidations there, or you pretty much kind of, you know, you had your target and you just kind of knew where you had to be type of deal?
I think anytime you spend a lot of money, you're going to do a lot of research, and you're going to, you know, be curious a little bit. But if you look at, you know, if I was going to spend money on a current player, Mike Trout, you know, that, especially spending $4 million on a card like that, of course I'd be nervous. The guy could slide it home, get hurt. He could, you know, get hurt doing any number of things. He can do something illegal. He could say something bad, and all these things could, you know, it could come out that he used steroids or whatever. A lot of things could cause his reputation to go under, and therefore the price go under. So yes, I would be extremely nervous about buying a card with these with those kind of numbers on a current player. So for me, you know, I got rid of that risk, I guess, buying a Mantle, because, you know, you can't do those things. And, you know, this is the most iconic card in the world. You know, growing up, I had a reprint in a screw down. You know, that was back then. Even today, it's so iconic. And, you know, there could be one other card that's equally as iconic, but I think that's only for card hobbyists. I didn't know who that other card was until I got deep into cards. I didn't know who it was when I was a kid, and that's the Honus. And you know, so I would say that this card is definitely more known, definitely more recognized, and that's why if you're going to buy something, you buy the Mona Lisa, and that's why I bought this one. It's the most recognizable. It's the Mona Lisa of sports cards, and that's why I you know, I could justify it. And if you look at the numbers, you know, Michael Jordan was in the teens in the same time period, and jumped up. At that time, it was like 250. So, you know, over 20x. You've got you had, you know, Wayne Gretzky, you had Jackie Robinson go from 50 to 400. You had all these cards. LeBron James went from 1,000 to 40,000 now. You have all these cards that have just gone insane. And this card in particular had, you know, 50 years of consistent growth that, you know, didn't have the big dips like the other ones, and it just didn't do those massive jumps. So I felt like it was undervalued and definitely there for a pop. I mean, also, I still think it's undervalued. Look at the eights. You know, the eights jumped from 4 to 600 to now just sold for 1.6. But there's 35 eights. And if you look at the Jordan rookie, there's 317 or so, with a ton being broken out of packs. You know, that thing is selling for 720. If there's 317 of those things selling at 720, and there's only 35 eights, you know, 6 9s and 3 10s, I think that 8 is still underpriced at 1.6, because, you know, supply and demand. How much demand is there for Jordan? There's a lot of demand for Jordan, but there's a lot of demand for Mickey Mantle as well. And so I think that that's still an underpriced card. There's a lot less population of it. And yeah, I think it still has a lot of room to grow, to be honest.
No, and I concur with you. I mean, you know, you mentioned, I mean, the Jordan's an iconic card too, but like you mentioned, every once in a while you read, they find like a case of sealed wax still. And there's, you know, there's 3 to 4, if not more, Jordans in most of those boxes. And so yet to be, you know, hit the light of day. And so when you look at the pop reports, I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. I think people are just kind of, I think the number sort of like just as eye-opening, and you know, I think that's where people say, "Oh man, that's crazy." But when you really look at the market overall, it's not as crazy as people think. I think some of that, honestly, too, Rob, comes from a place of jealousy. Oh, I wish I could buy that, you know, and so when you can't, you like to maybe, you know, take a shot at other people who can. I mean, that's a little bit of what the hobby does as well. So, but I agree with you know what you're saying. When you look at the population of these cards in these conditions, it just makes it adds up to that, you know.
And I see the price continuing to rise also because, like, you know, it is there. If you were going to buy, so let's say you take that $5 million and you put it on a down payment to buy a $25 million house. There's a lot of homes for $25 million, especially in LA, New York, wherever. So there's a lot of homes. It's not that rare. Whereas this, there's only so many of these things. You know, it's the same with art. The art prices, a lot of art that sells for over $100 million. And it's a rarity aspect. This is the most iconic card. It's a piece of priceless art. And so I think the card will keep going up in value, and you'll have more. Hopefully, you have more people like me that keep getting in and think so, you know, and want these pieces of American history.
So, is there a number? I mean, I know you said you plan on keeping it for the long haul. Is there any point where you like? Have you thought about this? Like, if, you know, if it gets to that, if the market bears that, I'm you know, as much as I love the card, I have to move it at that level. Have you you know, even that toyed with that thought at all?
I think, right when I bought it, I got an offer for $6 million, then I got an offer for $8 million. And, of course, I told my mom, and she's like, take the money. What are you doing? That's a great, you bought for 5.2, you sold for $8 million in a month. That's amazing. I don't know. I think it's easy to say you would, but when it comes down to, it leaving your hands, it's a lot more difficult. I think the price would go up every day in my head, but I don't know. Right now you'd have to have a big check.
Yeah. Well, I'm out. It won't be me as much as I'd love to do it. From when you purchased it, how long was it until it was in your hands? What was the time period from point of purchase to you have it? It's in your hands.
Probably 5 days. Because it has to come in an armored vehicle, cargo plane, and or a certain specific plane and things. So we had to also make sure it's insured on the transit. So it's probably 5 days.
Yeah, what was that fight? Was it nervous? Like, I hope not. Obviously it's precious. It's like someone, a loved one flying. It's just I want this thing to arrive safely. What kind of thought were you thinking? Stuff like, man, I hope this doesn't occur. And
of course, come on, yeah, it's nerve-wracking for sure. Yeah, because it's just so priceless. It's not, you can't replace it. That's the problem.
Yeah. And you make a good point. As great as Mike Trout is, and right now he's probably arguably, not even arguably, probably the best player in baseball right now. But you make a great point. He's currently playing. If something was to go off track, he got in trouble, he did something criminal. Not that we expect that, and I don't. But hypothetically, if any one of those things you mentioned were to occur, that's going to change the whole market in one full swoop. And it's a great point. Sometimes we don't think about those things. We sort of live in the moment and not realize, like, there's a lot of players that we didn't think this, and we find out, later on otherwise. And so, yeah, did you do anything modern wise, or is your focus mostly on vintage?
I have a diversified portfolio, a little bit of modern, a little bit of everything, but I'm definitely mostly vintage.
Okay. Yeah. Just because of what you said, or that's just where your passion lies, or both?
Well, I was more of a sports fan as a kid than I was now. I have a lot of friends that are in the industry, play and things, and I just as a kid I was into sports, and now I'm just I'm more, it brings back that childhood memory to collect those old guys. And you think about it, for me anyways, there's only one card to buy in 52, or for Mantle, or nowadays if you get a Mike Trout, there's 100 different options. So I like the easy part of collecting, the vintage. There's just a lot of, that's when I grew up. That's what's fun for me. It brings you back to that childhood aspect of getting the cards you couldn't get then. And but I have a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And you make a good point. I think you're seeing a lot of people trending back towards the vintage now. I think for exactly the point you made, it's almost less confusing. Now a modern day player could have 100 different rookie cards. Like, which one do I buy? You buy this one. Oh, I wish I would have bought that one. And so there's a lot of guessing game, and that vintage is really streamlined where cards are which one to get. It's not a secret. It's not, you don't have to do algebra to figure out which is the card to go after. And it's a great point, that you made. We're seeing. Go ahead.
That was, it's my favorite Kobe, but I don't even know if it's, other people like other Kobe's. But I bought the Skybox EX 2000.
Yeah, that's a nice card.
Is that the right Kobe? I just think it's cool if you're holding it. It's got clear, so that's, I bought a 9 first, and then I bought a 10. So then I flipped the 9 to a buddy for what I paid, I think, for it, just so he could have it. But that I think is the coolest Kobe. But you could think hey, it's the Topps Chrome, or, that's the most popular. So I like when it's saying, okay, Bird Magic rookie, boom, this is the card,
Yeah.
I like, for me personally, but.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I'm also at 48. That's right. I grew up in the era where there were less brands, and you got the card. For Mattingly rookies, I'm a New York City kid, and it was really three cards. It was Donruss, Fleer, and Topps, with the Donruss being my personal favorite. Now, if Mattingly was playing today, you'd have 100 choices rather than just three.
Yeah.
And so it's a different hobby. We've seen obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, Rob. We've seen the hobby. This is really people. People like to debate investment, collecting, but no one can debate that the cards have become an asset class of their own. We've seen athletes themselves. We've seen celebrities now get more involved recently. You think that continues? You think we're just the tip of the iceberg? We see more people in that air kind of get into the hobby, seeing what's going on even.
Yeah, and that's where I think this is different than 2016. 2016 you had a little bit of a spike, and then you had a drop. And I think this is a lot different because you have it on the news on a daily basis. You have guys like me that have made purchases that created more news, and you do have athletes and you do have celebrities. I've personally got a few athletes that good friends that have jumped in a great way, and hopefully they get into it and have a good time with it. You're seeing artists and musicians jump in. Today there was Meek Mill, who is a rapper or art. He jumped in and posted on his Instagram, and you have these guys all the time jumping in, and I think it's just going to be a snowball effect. Now maybe people have heard about it, and now they see their favorite artist or their favorite athlete, and they're like, oh shoot, maybe I should jump in. So it's a supply and demand. Basic economics. There's always a limited supply of this stuff, and as more and more people come in, it's demand rises and prices go up. So I do think it's going to continue, and it's a lot of fun. It's addicting.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a segment of the hobby too that doesn't like, I'm not one of them, but just being in the hobby a long time, that doesn't like new folks coming in. And as someone of my age, I always try to tell those folks, like, we were all new at one point. Like, you have to start somewhere. And if we don't have new people, like, I'm not going to live forever. I'm going to, I hate to be morbid, but time's up. And we need those people coming behind to keep the hobby flourishing, transaction going. So if you truly love the hobby and passionate for it, new people, I welcome them. I think it's important. I think they're the next people to take that, almost like a relay race, take that baton, keep running it forward, and then they'll pass it back to the people, coming behind them, and keep this hobby thriving and flourishing. And 2020, probably arguably, Rob, the best year in the history of the hobby. And like you said, with all this new folks coming in and transacting, it's going to make it all the more better. And I welcome it. I'm one of those guys that don't look at it like as a negative, like some might, but I wish more people kind of took that view and see it for what I think it really is. It's just helping the hobby grow and expand. And, like you said, 2020, it's really become a mainstream thing. We're seeing it on regular news outlets and on regular TV. It used to be, when you did cards, like, you sort of were like, you didn't advertise it. Like, hey, what do you do for a hobby? Like, I collect cards. Right now it's like not a big, like, now it's like a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm into sports cards. And so it's the temperature has changed in the hobby as well, where it used to be some people might be self-conscious about it. Now there's no shame in the game, as they say. And it was never for me anyway, but for some people, they didn't like to advertise that all the time. And but now it's a whole different, it's a whole new hobby, and I like it. Even being sort of the old man on the porch, if you will, I think it's important to keep it, keep it going.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the more people, the better. And if people don't want more people to come to the hobby, then they can have their own meets and they can only sell to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my point. Like if you don't want new people coming in and then we die off, let's be real, then what do you got left, right? So, I mean, just common sense. You just got to do the math and whatnot. So a couple final questions, real quick ones. You know, what's I don't know if you want to say, or you have another card that maybe you're looking at, or right now you kind of want to, you know, enjoy the moment. Like where are you at, like hobby wise?
You know, I just bought, I have a couple Jordan PSA 10 rookies, the 86 Fleers, and I was wanting the sticker. And, you know, I bought one on eBay for 35 grand, and this guy, Tim Mullins, didn't ship it, had a problem with Puerto Rico. And then as soon as I switched it to Indiana and paid, he canceled my order. So I wanted that card so bad. So I just forked over 200 grand for that card. So that was a big win for me because just, you know, I wanted that sticker. I think the sticker's only 100. So much, you know, more difficult to get the sticker to be good. So that was a big win for me. And I would love to get my next one. I would say I want the Bird Magic rookie, you know, 1980 tops. I've got about every grade except for the 10. So I'd love to get that one. If anybody's got it, hey, hit me up.
Now you mentioned Puerto. I've shipped stuff myself to Puerto Rico. It's not that big.
Yes, I bought a fortune. Yeah, I bought about everything on eBay. No one had a problem except for this guy, and he was had a problem. So I switched it. All you have to do is tick a box. It's still a U.S. It's just a territory. You just click a little box. It was too much trouble for this guy to do that. So then you think it was seller's remorse? You think that was? The guy's not a nice guy, that's for sure. So then I switched it to an Indiana delivery address and paid and then he canceled and quoted problem with shipping. I mean, that's the kind of, I think what's going to hurt the hobby is people doing that because, you know, you get these guys that are super pumped about the, you know, and that was a lot of money at the time, $35,000 2 months ago for that card or a month ago, or whatever, you know, and then somebody has a bad experience. You know, and everybody else I've dealt with has been tremendous. Everybody's been so kind. No one's had a problem shipping to Puerto Rico ever. Everybody's been, you know, hey, if there was like, hey, it says you don't ship to Puerto Rico, like, no problem. Let me fix it. It's a second. I mean, everybody's been tremendous in the hobby that I've experienced. I've had one, you know, bad thing. It's no big deal. Like, he's probably, you know, just angry at his own life and staking out on everybody else. So I'm not worried about it. But so that was a big win for me as far as, you know, I finally just said, screw it, I'm going to pay whatever because I want the card. Yeah, and I would say that the Bird Magic would be one that I don't have yet that I would like. You know, there's anything that's super, I like low pop, high grade, obviously, and iconic people. You know, American history, and that's what I'm looking for. So.
Yeah, that Bird Magic card. I mean, that to me was always for a long time like super undervalued. You got two legends of the game, they're rookies on the same card. Like how often does that? Like it doesn't happen really. And so
it's over now. It was undervalued when I first jumped into it. I've been trying to get that card since I got into the hobby in the 10, but now you know it
goes quick. It happens quick.
It's crazy how that thing went up. So, but you know, for the right price, I would love to get that one. That's a cool one. But you know, the nines also spiked. You know, went from 15 grand to 70s, 80s. It's crazy.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of like going up with nines and a lot of different cards. Even lesser valued cards, the nines have really kind of shot up. You know, I think a lot of, in some cases, especially probably more on the modern side, Rob, a lot of people are cracking those open and resubbing, trying to get that 10. Maybe not as much on the vintage end doing that, but maybe. I mean, anything's possible, but I think especially more the modern, ultra modern people always will you know, try to kind of bump up their grade. You know, kind of closing with just one more question too. You know, the big topic in the hobby is, you know, the hobby's flourishing right now. You got sort of three camps, right? You got one camp that says, hey, this is going to keep booming for the unforeseen future. You got another, Chicken Little, the sky is going to fall, the bottom's going to drop. There's no way this can continue. There's going to be a crash. And then you have that middle kind of person that, no, it's going to be a market correction. It can't keep going to the right and up forever. But I also don't think there's going to be a crash either. I kind of fit in between. What's someone who's in the hobby and on that level, like what do you think the hobbies, the future is in that regard?
I think if more and more people keep coming in, which it seems to be the case, then there's no direction it can go but up. Again, supply and demand. Now, the only way that changes is if there's oversupply, which is what happened in the 80s, 90s. There was a boom, and so the card companies just got greedy and they started making a ton of product, and therefore oversupply causes the prices to tank. So that's where I see the industry will have a correction. If the card companies continue to just make, and there's too much of it, then obviously the prices come down. So, but the vintage stuff, I don't see a correction is what people are saying on that kind of stuff, because again, the supply is so limited and it's not going to, there's no way to get more. So, but also I look at it going, my house, my art, I'm not looking at the price every day. And that's where people, I think, need to change. Is this your business now? Are you a card flipper, or are you buying this because you love it and because you're collecting it? And if you're not, this isn't your full-time job, or then I would just say, I don't look at the value of my home or my art every day, and you just buy it because you think it's amazing, you think it's cool. And then, you wake up and you're 80 years old and you're like, wow, this stuff is really valuable. Let's sell it and pass it on to the kids, or, that's when you decide it. So I think you got to figure out what kind of collector are you. Me personally, I probably got into it initially thinking I could make some good money. And then you get engulfed into the hobby and you realize there's a true love for that. And so I'm not the flipper, but my view is we're just starting. I think it's going to continue to go and yeah, it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're, like you said, I think we're in the, to use a baseball analogy, I think we're in the early innings of a 9-inning game, maybe even the first or second inning. And like you said, a lot of new people coming in every day, weekly, and keeping this, keeping the hobby moving forward. I'm supportive of that fact, where others may not be as take up the same tone, but I think it's important if you're someone like myself and you that's going to be doing this for the long haul, you got to support that, because those are the folks that are going to keep what we're doing going forward, and without them, we don't live forever. So we always need new, and I don't care what industry or hobby or business, whether it's coins or any business, you need new people in it. And so I've always welcomed that, and I think it's important.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I appreciate you. I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate you giving. What's that?
What's your favorite card?
I'm a Jackie Robinson guy, and so
48 leaf, or
I don't have. Here's the thing: I don't have the 48 leaf. It's one of my biggest. I had a couple of opportunities before that thing went through the ceiling to buy, and I always kind of thought, I'll be there, and I spent my money somewhere else. I thought I'd just come back to it, and I didn't. Probably 2 or 3 times, and really kicking my. If we could go back in the DeLorean with Dr. Brown, I'd go back to a couple spots in time and buy them when I had the opportunity and didn't. And now that card, especially in better grades, is crazy. And I don't know if I do a little bit with the fractionals just kind of for fun.
Yeah.
And I think it was Rally. They just did a 48 leaf. And so I bought some shares. That might be the closest.
That's great. I only have a 55 that. I love that card. I've got the Bowman and a lot higher grade. But yeah, I think Jackie is, the guy is such a legend. And
yeah. And
we went through, and
yep. I'm a Brooklyn, New York kid. I grew up in New York City, and my dad lived at Ebbets Field, and so I learned about Jackie Cheapers before I could barely talk. And I always joke on the show. People probably, I'm about to say, they're like, we've heard this a million times, but every book report or speech I had to give or essay, it was always Jackie Robinson, to the point like my teachers, even before they gave out the assignment, they turned to me and say, John, pick someone else other than Jackie Robinson. And so then you would just go to another, I did Roy Campanella or Duke Schneider or something else. But so growing up in Brooklyn, I have other cards, but that one eluded me, and I'm fearful to say that probably, unless I get one in one or two, and even those now are crazy money too. Yeah. So I don't know. Wishful thinking. I play the Mega Millions. I tell my wife, like, we joke around, like she'll buy some tickets. Like, what would you get first? And I tell her the 48 Leafs. She don't know what that is. Like, all right, you don't understand, but so. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's probably someone asked me, I was on another show, and they're like, what's your biggest hobby regret? And that was the first thing that came. There was probably 2 or 3 times back in the day, and it wasn't nowhere near now. And I always kind of thought I can get it whenever. I thought it was going to be there for whenever I thought about it, and I dropped the ball there. So you live and learn. You live and learn. So,
but that's a great card.
It is. It is. Yeah. Well, Rob, I appreciate your candidness, giving some time. I know you're busy. I'm sure the requests are piling up, and I appreciate you making some time for Sports Card Nation. I always give our guests each week, kind of the final words, anything you want to give out, websites, social media stuff, where people can see what you're up to, what you're doing, what you're about. Take your time, give out all that stuff you like to.
Yeah, Instagram, I'm just Rob G. That's it, just ROB and G. And then, you can buy dope.com I own, and then CBDFX is another company I'm heavily invested in. That's a great company, but that's about it. Just Rob G on Instagram. Pretty simple. And then
all right.
New movie coming out this year with Bruce Willis. I think you should check that out. It's called American Siege. It'll be cool, I think.
There you go. I'll be watching that for sure. I like Bruce Willis too, so he's all right. Yeah. So, maybe have to get him into the sports cards if he's not already.
I'm gonna try. That's for sure. I may do another film with him. So if I do, I'll have to get him a card, get him in.
So, Rob, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. Will be interesting to see, what's around the corner for you. Be following you and checking out what you're doing in the hobby as well.
John, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.